One of the things that you'll notice about the design of many digital products is that they're made for many small interactions. This is especially true of social media, right? Twitter is designed for you to read hundreds of short tweets, short thoughts. Instagram is designed for you to look at hundreds of photos. Messaging and email are designed for you to hold multiple conversations asynchronously, a message or a short email at a time. And it's not just that there are short tasks for each program, but also that these programs are designed to be run in sync with one another. So digital activity tends to be this really heavy context switching behavior. And there are exceptions, of course. You can't characterize all digital activity like this, but it seems to dominate most of what I'm doing right now, at least. And I find that the more that I do this activity, the better my brain gets at dealing with it. I get better at context switching. It makes sense, right? You're practicing, you're teaching your brain how to think. But the problem underlying this is that not everything worthwhile in life can be done with this rapid context switching. There are some things that require prolonged focus. Think about, running a marathon or painting or writing a book. For the most part, it doesn't help you to be really good at context switching when doing these activities. It's not a skill that contributes to that. Being really good at context switching has allowed me to balance things really well between school, work, extracurriculars, my social life. If I wasn't good at context switching, I would have a really hard time balancing them. So it's been really important to me. But being good at concentrating has allowed me to dive into some of these kind of deeper tasks that require concentration. And so I think both are really important. I think that you need to train your brain to be able to think in both ways. And the digital world really feeds into this context switching way of thinking. So a natural question to ask is, well, how do you feed into the concentrating way of thinking? In my experience, the biggest activity which has promoted this way of thinking in my life has been reading. Because it's impossible to read when your brain is in this context switching mindset. You can read the words, but what I find is that if my brain is in the wrong way of thinking and I'm trying to read, I'll often read like a page and realize I've just been looking at the words and I actually haven't been absorbing anything. I don't know if you have experienced this as well. So reading is this really simple task which requires concentration in order for you to absorb anything. I find that the same is true of audiobooks. If my brain is in this context switching mode of thinking, then I'll just be listening to the words and not absorbing what they mean. And switching your brain into this concentrating way of thinking can be really difficult. I really struggled with it when I started reading regularly. I would sit down and I would start reading and then I'd kind of get lost because I'd get distracted. And it took me a few weeks of reading every day to eventually adapt to it, but it turned into something that I could turn on and off. I could sit down with a book and in a few minutes, I would be able to concentrate and focus and not be jumping around. And the benefits of training this way of thinking were really big on other aspects of my life. So it helped my studying a lot. Because studying is something that you can kind of do in both ways of thinking, but one is much more effective than the other. If you're concentrating fully while you're studying and you're not in this context switching mode, then you get a lot more done in the same amount of time. And so rather than kind of sitting down to study for 4 hours, but really being on my phone a little bit and thinking about other things and whatever, I could get the same or more done in just an hour or two. And I found that similar effects carried through in other parts of my life as well. So by training my brain to be able to think in this more concentrating as opposed to context switching way, I was able to improve my life in seemingly unrelated ways. And so that's why I think reading is so critically important right now. Because I don't know about you, but I'm spending pretty much all of my day on digital devices doing heavy context switching. And so I find my brain adapting to this heavy context switching way of thinking. And so it's good to have this counterbalance of concentrating, of sitting down and slowing down, because it helps you appreciate that moment a little bit more if you're able to slow down and concentrate. It's good to have both. Of course, that's not the only benefit of reading. I've talked about reading so many times on this channel at this point. I think it's such a beneficial activity, and I think sometimes people get hung up on some of the simplest things. I get a lot of questions like, should I read fiction, nonfiction, biographies? Should I listen to audiobooks? And truthfully, I don't think that it matters. What matters is that you're concentrating on absorbing the words on the page or in your ear. That's what matters, because that's what's affecting the way that you're thinking. And you know, the cool thing about books is that for whatever passion you may hold, you can find a book that was authored by someone who has dedicated their life to that passion. And beyond that, it lets you find passions that you didn't know that you had. And that's why I personally choose to read all sorts of books. I read fiction, nonfiction, biographies. I read all sorts of stuff, and I listen to all sorts of stuff. And the reason is that I love exploring, and I love finding ideas and seeing where they connect. And there's no better way to do that than reading. And so that's my case for why reading is so important right now. I think that it's important we feed this concentrating part of our brains, but it's also really cool to explore our passions and to learn about ourselves. And it's just something that I think everyone could benefit from to some extent. I'd now like to thank Audible for sponsoring this video. Audible has the largest selection of audiobooks on the planet, but now they're giving even more value to their members with the Plus catalog. The Plus catalog has thousands of podcasts, Audible originals, meditations, guided fitness sessions, and so much more, and it's ever growing, and all members have access to it. I use Audible pretty much every day. When I'm coming into the office, that's what I listen to on the train. Right now I'm listening to Nemesis by Isaac Asimov, and I really recommend it. You can start listening too with a 30-day Audible trial. If you go to audible.com/johnfish or text johnfish to 500-500. This will get you one free audiobook as well as access to their ever-growing Plus collection, all for free. That's if you go to audible.com/johnfish or text code johnfish to 500-500. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you got something out of it and you enjoy content like this, feel free to subscribe. I'm John Fish. I'll see you next time. Hope you're doing well.